Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Keeping It Real.
Hello and welcome to the show. You are watching / listening to Keeping It Real from Wannabe Critic Productions. Ethan Maestri is joining me today. He's been joining me along this journey of Star Trek, all of the original Star Trek movies, and now we're at Star Trek 5, Ethan, at long last. Can you believe it?
The final frontier.
I know, but isn't that wild? Because
the last movie they did. No, it's not.
Yeah, I was saying that exactly. Like, the story ends here. There is no more after this. Could you imagine if they would have ended Star Trek here?
We'll get into that.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
We'll get into that.
So it's kind of funny, Ethan, because, I've noticed this project is taking quite a long time. We started recording this project, like 2 years ago? Year and a half ago? Something like that?
Yeah.
So, here we are now. And I gotta say, it feels kind of like whenever you had to actually wait for something again for me, and something felt exciting to wait for, because obviously it's hard to get together and record consistently all the time, which is why we kind of kept this on the back burner. But it's so much time has been spaced out in between me watching these movies, it kind of feels like, I don't know, it's kind of a familiar feeling of or at least when you wait a year for a season of TV. That's kind of how I've been feeling. So, yeah.
I almost feel like when we get done with this, we need to have a retrospective podcast. How do we feel about these movies now?
Right.
If enough time has passed where we might feel differently.
Yeah, exactly.
You might feel differently. I could see that happening possibly. But, yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, I mean...
it's been fun.
Yeah, no, it definitely has been fun. And yeah, I think it would be fun to go back and kind of do a how we felt then versus how we felt, versus how we feel now. I could take some sound clips and stuff and throw that.
I can hear me from 2 years ago saying something about, Star Trek 2 and being like, idiot.
Yeah, exactly. Don't you love when that happens? I hate whenever I go back to listen to old shows, whenever I try and psych myself up for podcasting again, I go back to listen to old shows and I'm like, wow, we do change as people, or at least our thoughts change at least. But yeah. I digress. We are here to talk about Star Trek 5, The Final Frontier, here on Keeping It Real. Ethan, you've referenced this movie throughout the years, in a variety of ways, but I have to say, I don't quite know how you feel about this movie, and you have no idea how I feel about this movie, so this is kind of exciting. But what I want you to do is I want you to give me, in your own words, a synopsis of what this movie is about.
For the movie itself, so here we are, we're picking up with our crew on shore leave. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, the Troika, are having shore leave together, which kind of doesn't make sense when you're cooped up in a spaceship together for all those months. But hey, what they do on their free time is their business. So Kirk is climbing El Capitan. He falls. Discussions later that evening circle around life, death, and Kirk reveals he's always known he's going to die alone. So this is going to be something that we're going to revisit in this movie. While they're doing that, other members of the crew, Chekhov, Sulu, apparently they're camping as well. Go figure. I didn't think they liked William Shatner that much, but whatever, But in the meantime, the rest of our crew is up on the ship, and we're only about a week or two after Star Trek 4, where Kirk gave the final command in the end of that movie that we just talked about last, in which he said, "Let's see what's out there." Right? Well, they found out what the Enterprise A is made of. Apparently, spit and baling wire, apparently, is all it's holding it together. They just don't make them like they used to. However, Scotty's on the job, and he's putting it together. But An alert comes in. The Enterprise is the only ship available. Apparently, a group of terrorists have taken hostages on Nimbus 3, the intergalactic peace planet in the neutral zone.
I just paused there. Okay, so hit pause. A starship? There are no starships on Nimbus 3. I just had to say it.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to get into it. This movie is really, really quotable.
Oh, it is.
It's great. It's great for that. But anyway, all right, so the Enterprise sets off, and they arrive. They stage a rescue mission because they're not going to get anywhere with Sybok, the leader of the terrorists. And so they launch a mission. It goes sideways, and we realize that Sybok is Spock's brother. They're taken captive. Kirk and the crew are taken captive. Sybok has a plan to take over the Enterprise. We shift from the planet up to the Enterprise. Chaos and hilarity ensue, in which the crew basically comes under Sybok's sway. He has he's very good at talking with people and getting them to reveal their pain. And in doing so, somehow they come under his spell at that point. But anyway, however, the troika of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy do not cow to Sybok's wishes. They're thrown into the brig. Scotty helps them escape. But then, as all the running around is happening, then Sybok gets his wish, and he is able to take the ship to the center of the galaxy, where he expects to meet God. So they arrive. The crew, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and Sybok, they all go down to meet God. They meet God. He's not what they think he is. He actually ends up being kind of I'm not going to use the word I was about to say, but he's not a good man. God isn't a good man. And the Klingons are involved and kind of, throw some additional chaos in there, but they end up saving the day. All of the Klingon stuff is kind of B story anyhow, but we do get a little hint of Kirk's attitude toward the Klingons and, what's going to have to be overcome for them to be at peace. But that's the next movie. We'll get into that later. But in any case, Sybok loses his life. Spoiler alert, the movie's over 25, 30 years old now. And Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are good and are kind of settled in who they are. They've accepted their pain that they carry with them. And they go back to Earth and finish their camping trip in Yosemite National Park. Toasting marshmallows and singing Row, Row, Row Your Boat.
Marshmallows?
Marshmallows, yes. Yeah.
So, okay.
That's the movie.
That is the movie. Well done. Yeah, you did it. How do you feel about this movie?
Where to start?
How do you feel about this movie, Ethan?
My history with this movie is complicated. In 1989, when this movie first came out, I actually really liked this movie. I did not go to the theater to see it. It came out as a VHS rental. My parents rented it. We sat down and watched it. They laughed. I thought it was great. I liked Star Trek. I loved the first 4 movies. I had seen them. So I was keenly interested in this one. And at the time, I thought, well, there's a lot of humor in here. For me, as a 13, 11, 12-year-old kid at the time, loved it. In the years after that, I started to see this movie as being not nearly as strong as the other entries in the franchise. And so you alluded to the fact that I have brought up this movie in past nerd conversations that we've had either on podcasts or amongst friends, and I have been very derisive toward this movie. It has never been my favorite for a long time. All of that said, in the last 10 years, 5 years, I would say, something weird has happened in which I actually appreciate this movie a lot more. And it's weird because I think a lot of people were in the same boat that I was in, where they did not respect this movie at all. It was something to be laughed at because it was cheaply made, quickly put together, not the best entry in the Star Trek franchise. And I think we just kind of went for a long time holding that point of view. But in the light of more recent Star Trek that has been released, this actually is not a bad story anymore. And so I actually like this movie a lot more than I used to. it is still not a great Star Trek movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it is not as bad as what I had held it for such a long time. That's how I feel about this movie.
I'm really caught in the middle between a lot of what you just said, because I feel the same way. Like, the cons far outweigh the pros. Like, truly, in my opinion, for the way I feel about it. Like, if you're gonna, like, you know, pen to paper, like, as a movie, it's like, oh my god. But I also love the Fast and the Furious movies.
Yeah.
And they're full of heart, and you can see the story and the, you know, the themes that they're trying to lay. And even though it's not great, it's like, at least there's a through line for what he's trying, you know, like, there are some one-liners where it's like, what is he trying to get at here? You know, like the whole ambiguity of, you know, what does God need with a starship, you know? And like the whole premise and just that whole storyline, I don't know. I'm not quite sure what Shatner, Roddenberry, Harve Bennett, and David Lowery were trying to say with that, but I think it's supposed to just kind of be not the focal point. I think the whole point of it is, look how far we've come, you know, and like, no, I'm not going to die alone. Like, I'm going to have these people with me, and, you know, like the idea of family. I had a moment where, you know, because Shatner directed this, and I had a moment where I wondered if he was putting like some of his own personal, not distaste, but maybe there was some part of him that really missed the early days of like the show, and kind of that hobbed together feeling, like like, you know, it is just duct tape and spit, like holding the set together. Like, you know, there's not really like, no, this is unimpressive. Like, this is a character story. Like, it felt like he kind of it was like an homage to like his earlier days as like the captain, you know what I mean? And you know, I was actually watching like some videos, like other podcasts discussing this movie, and, you know, kind of like bringing some things to light that I wouldn't have caught otherwise. You know, lots of people were talking about, you know, people involved in the production, like, no, they didn't want Shatner to direct, but a lot of them were actually surprised by how good he did. Like, he was kind of made for it, and it was like he was willing to get physical. Like the rock climbing, that's something he actually genuinely enjoyed doing. The horseback, the horseback riding, like he's very much like a sportsman, like always trying to, you know, do.
Interesting little tidbit since we're bringing that up.
Yeah.
I heard an interview with Lawrence Luckinbill, who plays Sybok in the movie. And his first day shooting on the set, William Shatner's like, all right, we have the scene where he rides up to the guy that's drilling holes in the dirt, right? The opening scene of the movie.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're riding the horse up to the guy. And the guy, and Lawrence Luckinbill has never rode a horse in his life. And he's like, okay. So he gets on the horse and he tries to ride it. Well, William Shatner is a horseman. He loves horses. And Lawrence Luckinbill is not riding a horse the way William Shatner was. So after trying it for a few takes, there's an exchange, and I won't repeat it because this is a family show, but there's an exchange, and William Shatner ends up doing that. That's William Shatner riding the horse, not Sybok riding up to the guy that's doing the horse. And that's just how this movie was made. It was like, okay, what can we do? This doesn't look right, so let's just go to Plan B and put it in.
So it has that vibe to it. You know, it has a lot of jarring transitions, and, you know, there's some things in there that, unless you're really paying attention or like thinking about the broader scope of how like not only these characters might feel, but how these actors might feel as well. And how, because obviously William Shatner is inserting a lot of himself into this movie. Like, there's just a lot of stuff here that is like, oh, that was definitely Shatner. Because whenever you talk about the film quality between 4 and 5, 5 is a far cry from what 4 is. Like, it is quite a departure. And to this day, I think 4 is still my favorite one, from what I've seen so far.
Right. Of the ones that we've done so far, 4 is definitely like the least sophomoric. I mean, this is the second movie that Leonard Nimoy has shot, and you can just tell he's learned a lot.
Right.
From 3 to 4. And now here in 4, he's a director, right? Yeah. Fully fledged and knows what he's doing. You get to 5, and it does. It very much feels like, okay, somebody new is in the captain's chair, and it's the captain.
Yeah, it kind of feels like, that's exactly. It's funny, this movie reminded me a lot of Thor, Love and Thunder. Like, like very, very similar vibes. Like, these are the characters that I love and this thing that I love, but the vibe is just different. Is it as good as the last one? No, it's not.
Not by any means.
Not by any means, but it does have heart.
Here's something interesting. Here's the thing that I think that's an interesting parallel you're drawing here, because what I've always felt about Love and Thunder is, all right, we don't have nearly as good a plot and a story to tell here, so let's just do more humor.
Yeah.
There's a parallel here.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the plot is extremely thin for this movie, Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Yeah. More humor. Right. We get way more humor expressed in this movie. Like I said, there's a lot of quotable lines. I'm not saying the humor is bad. I'm just saying it's, there are certain tools that new directors can reach for to make their movie less bad. Yeah. And I feel like Shatner definitely does this here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, too, whenever you're a creative and an artist, there's plenty of decisions that there are hills there you are willing to die on because it's your art and it's the way you see it. And that very much, there's things that I do sometimes, I'll show something, a friend something that I'm working on, or, just to kind of hear what they think. And, or, Emma, like, I'll show Emma a song. She's like, oh, yeah, do you really need to have, like, this here, this thing? And it's like, I don't know if I need to have it there, but I want it there. So, and that's just kind of like, that's an artist mentality. It's like, I'm the one creating this. But on a film set, like, there are so many other collaborators, and there are so many other people that have good ideas. Even though the director gets the final say, it's like he's wise to take the people around him, take their opinions into consideration whenever making these decisions, because there are some parts in this movie that are just like the whole thing with Scotty bonking his head on the ship. Like, I know this ship like the back of my head, bonk. Like,
yeah.
It's just kind of a disrespect to the character, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, yes and no. I see where I totally get it. Yes. But at the same time, this is also a story about Scotty and Uhura kind of falling in love, which is totally weird.
Yeah, what's with that?
But we're talking about he's a man distracted.
Yeah.
And so
that's true.
Hilarity can and often does ensue when someone finds themselves in that situation. You can say, I totally get what you're saying about Scotty. He knows the ship. He's not going to hit his head like that. But at the same time, you have an out that you can look at and say, well, here's why.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's good.
It's true. Was that Uhura dancing in the desert?
It was. That was pitched on a lark in production meetings, and somehow got the green light, and everybody thought, yeah, this is a great idea.
Huh. Yeah. It has not aged well. I mean,
yeah.
It was strange, but
look, that was an uncomfortable scene for 12-year-old me.
Yeah.
And you're right. It didn't get any better.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah. But anyways, that is these are the two things I have written down. Pros, in my opinion, genuinely entertaining. Like, it is entertaining.
Yeah, it is entertaining.
Between comedy and absurdity, and just like, just moments where it's just like, okay,
Well, Well,
there's something to be said
and the
about bad
advances-
movies being good. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't call this a bad movie, but it's not far off. You know what I'm saying?
The thing that I hated for so long was that the humor and the absurdity of some of the situations that they were looking for God, right?
Yeah.
The humor coupled with the absurdity of certain scenarios that were being played out in this story, it keeps you on the back foot so that you're not taking the story too terribly seriously, which helps if you're going to start covering over things that you're going to look a little bit closer at, like visual effects, right? It's like, okay, if the story is got humor in it and it's a little bit ridiculous over here, then in other areas where I'm used to seeing Star Trek being like top shelf, oh, it's like they didn't take this very seriously either.
Right.
So the whole movie kind of keeps a uniform, hey, are we serious or are we not?
Let's make a movie.
So, yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Can we talk about the visual effects for a moment?
Yeah, let's go
Because
ahead.
this has always been kind of the sticking point for this movie, like the hardcore problem that I have right at the core of it. It's not a secret. Paramount did not want to pony up the dough to ILM to do the fifth movie, right? ILM was in its prime. We're talking 1988, 1989. ILM currently is working on the third Indiana Jones movie at the time. They're doing Ghostbusters 2. They're doing all of your favorite late 80s films right now. And Paramount didn't want to pay for it. It was too high a price. So they shopped around and they found this. It's called Visual Effects, or I'm sorry, Associates and Farron is the name of the visual effects company that takes and does Star Trek V. They had been around since 1978. They had done commercials and film from that time forward and had actually won awards for some of the visual effects that they had done. Little Shop of Horrors in 1986, they won awards for. They had done a lot of big-ticket movies. They had never done anything like Star Trek. And it shows. Very much so.
I mean,
the tone and the quality that we had gotten used to from 1 to 2. In 2 is when ILM takes over. So ILM does 2 and 3 and Voyage Home. And we come here, and it is a huge tonal shift in the visual
it was
effects.
like watching 1 again, like, visual effect-wise.
No, 1's better. 1 is better.
Is it?
That is a hill I will die on.
Okay. All right. Calm down. Your pills.
Don't you dare. No. It's fine.
The one scene where they shoot the proton cannon and it just like the Enterprise just barely jets out of the way. I was just
Let me
kind of
correct
like,
you for a second. Photon torpedo.
Thank you, nerd. Thank you.
I'll accept that.
Yeah, but I'm like, I've played Starfield. You can't evade it that fast, all right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's cheesy. It has a strange cadence through the entire thing. Jokes that just don't land. Row, row, row your boat. How did that make it in the movie?
I found that rather endearing, but that was just me personally. That's one of the things I've found enduring all these years, actually, is seeing Kirk, Spock, and McCoy having a sing-along. That it was cool.
Okay,
But that's just me.
no,
I will not yuck your yum or yum your yuck.
Yeah.
So
No.
there. I said my piece.
Okay, thank you.
But journeying to the center of the galaxy and it being just food coloring and a plate of water, I don't buy it.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah,
That's what those effects look like.
Whenever, especially like, I don't know, whenever we see God, that is like genuinely scary to me, actually, because like I wasn't like expecting it, but
Oh, well, like the hologram floating.
Yeah.
The big floating head.
yeah.
No, that actually was pretty decent.
Yeah.
And that, I believe, if I remember what I read correctly, that is actually what got Associates and Farron the contract. Is they did a trial of that, and they were sufficiently impressed. The problem was their models department could not shoot the Enterprise, a Klingon ship, or anything else for that matter.
Yeah.
Visual effects wise.
Yeah.
It looked very bad.
It's kind of one of those movies, like, if you have it on in the background, like,
if you're not actually watching the movie,
Yeah.
it sounds really good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, I agree.
Exactly.
I agree.
Because, like, there were multiple times. I mean, I'm gonna be straight with you. Like, I've seen this movie twice now. Because I remember
Yeah.
the conversation. Now, I had watched Star Trek V right after I'd watched 4, so it was the second time I've seen this movie. First time I watched it without looking or without, doing anything else. This time
Paying
I watched
close
it while,
attention. Oh,
yeah.
okay.
This time, yeah. First time I watched it, I was really paying attention. This time I watched it, I was playing Destiny at the same time, while still paying attention. And there would be times where I would like look over and I'd be like, "Oh my god," just at the visuals.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm not going to say that this movie is bad.
Right. No, and I think that's a great point that you mentioned. If you don't actually look at the movie and just listen, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
And part of the reason is that Jerry Goldsmith score. They bring Jerry Goldsmith, but they won't go to Industrial Light and Magic, but they bring Goldsmith back after he did the first movie score, which was my favorite, hands down, from the motion picture. But after a while of James Horner, they bring Goldsmith in, and this is like one of the better scores of all of the Star Trek movies. I feel like.
Yeah, no, it's very
as
endearing.
as much as I dislike the movie itself, I have always had a soft spot for the soundtrack. It's a very good soundtrack, and it makes the movie feel cinematic. It drags it up and makes it better than what its visual effects team is able to give you.
It's definitely one facet that shines through the entire movie.
Yeah.
Even Uhura's song is, relatively catchy.
I've always wanted to play to a captive audience.
Goodness
Lines.
gracious.
There's some great. Yeah, I love the sequence with the used car salesman on the screen.
Yeah.
In the Nimbus 3 bar.
Yeah.
And when they're captured, and his last line that you hear is "Beam on down."
Yeah.
And there were some really nice touches in this movie.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said,
What are y'all just standing around for? Do you not know a jailbreak when you see one?
Yeah.
That's a great segment.
It's almost like that. There were moments where it kind of felt like almost like a who's that director? Who did Spaceballs? Mel Brooks. There's time where it almost feels like a Mel Brooks movie, just with some of the one-liners.
Yes.
And I think that's part
absolutely.
of. I think that's it's like, if anyone else besides William Shatner didn't have his name plastered all over this movie, we'd probably hate it a lot more, because it's like, oh well, William Shatner directed it. So have you seen William Shatner? Have you seen it? Do you know anything about him? Like, he's the most egotistical person on the planet. So it's actually quite amazing that we got something as pure as we did from an egomaniac. It's still bad. I mean, it's still not great, but I mean, it could have been a lot worse. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No,
So,
absolutely.
Here's some fun facts for you. So William Shatner's daughter was a yeoman.
Yeoman, yeah.
Yeoman, yeah. And
Yep.
a blink and you miss it cameo. Star Trek V's director William Shatner had his daughter Melanie cameo as a, how do you say it? Yeoman?
Yeoman. Yep.
Who gave James Kirk his officer jacket. She was the last of Shatner's daughters to cameo in Trek, with both Lisbeth and Leslie appearing on the original series. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm. I did, and also there is a book that she was writing on behalf of her father while he was directing this movie.
Oh,
and
wow.
The book came out shortly. It was a concurrent release with the movie about William Shatner's first directorial entry into film. Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting.
So she had to be on set anyway.
Yeah,
and,
right. It's like, might as well.
Get her on camera. Yep.
A deleted scene showed a fifth head on Mount Rushmore. There's a deleted scene where Pavel Chekhov and Hikaru Sulu would hike the area in front of Mount Rushmore, and the mountain would have a fifth head adorned to the left side right next to George Washington.
That's right. I forgot about that. Not the extra head. I had never heard that, actually. What I'd forgotten was I always, in my head, assumed Chekhov and Sulu are also in Yosemite. They're not. You're right. They're in South Dakota.
Oh, they're just on a different.
They're
in
Mount
a different,
Rushmore.
Oh,
they're in a different.
part of the,
they're out in the woods, but they're in
Right.
a different part of the country.
but likely filmed
That's
in the
right.
exact same spot, most likely. You know what I mean?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's funny.
The wonder of Hollywood, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hollywood magic. Shakari was taken from Sean Connery. Ever wonder why the god that Spock's brother Sybok was looking for was named Shakari? Well, the alien god thing was named after British actor Sean Connery.
Hadn't heard that one.
I know. Well, Sean Connery was originally going to be Sybok.
That I had heard.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, he was
was
in
a backup
consideration.
plan.
I don't know that he. I don't think that he was ever in serious talks, but
Yeah.
they were bantering. They were bantering about that.
Yeah. Did you know that some countries only got it on VHS?
Mm-mm.
So while the film was released in the United States in the summer, some didn't get a theatrical cut. The film performed so badly locally that a good number of foreign outlets only ever got the film on home media.
Yeah. Well, that has always been Star Trek's problem, is the foreign market. It never has done well in the foreign market. So yeah, when it didn't do great in theater, I mean, we're talking about people thought that this was going to be a blockbuster event, and in fact, that was why you had the advertising campaign of movie theaters, a picture of movie theaters with seat belts on them, saying, "Why are theaters putting seat belts on their seats? Because Star Trek V releases this summer, 1989." And it's like the hype was massive for this movie, but in very quick order, it did not materialize, and in fact, nearly killed the franchise. I mean, this is, it was not received well at all, and this was, you talked about what if this was the last movie? It very nearly was. Not to say anything bad about William Shatner, as we've talked about. There's good in here. It's just the script was not strong enough, and then the visual effects were just not up to par.
It's just, it's one of those things, it's like, we do this with games all the time. We compare, like when a game comes out, it's like if it has a predecessor, we compare it.
Yeah.
We as humans do that.
To our detriment.
To our detriment. And, sometimes it takes hindsight to realize, you know what, it wasn't that bad. But it probably should have just gone to this is a movie that would go straight to streaming services. You know what I mean? Like, you might catch it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
So it's frustrating, but at the same time, I think it speaks to the quality. Art is found in a variety of qualities, and a variety of tastes, and you just don't know. It's like something just may not be to your taste. It's just not. It's not necessarily bad. There's plenty of people that live for crappy movies. Like, they love them. You know what I mean? Because they can make fun of them. And it's like, more power to you, but Star Trek V is not one that I will be revisiting anytime soon.
Yeah. It also speaks to the power of the fans in that they wouldn't allow it to die even after this entry. I mean, we'd had a really good run throughout the middle 80s. From Star Trek 2 through 4. There was a lot to be excited about as a Star Trek fan. And yeah, this one wasn't as big of a hit, but it was still Star Trek. And at the core of it, you had Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, and you had a lot of the feels that the original series gave you. And I think that's the thing that allows this movie, despite, like, me personally, I don't think it hasn't aged well to me.
No.
But there is enough here that allows you to see Star Trek, right? It's not the best, but it's still a Star Trek movie. At the end of the day, it's still all of the things that I love about Star Trek. It's all there.
Yeah.
it's just not as pretty.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and there's just things like...
it's not, or it's well done.
You know, and there's just things that, like, you know, Kirk saying, you know, why do you need to climb a mountain? And it's like, because it's there. You know, like, there's things about...
Or I want my pain. I need my pain.
Yeah, I need my pain. And there's things he touches on that it's like... I don't know. It just kind of shows... He thinks he's wearing his heart on his sleeve, and that's great. The problem is it's like... It's completely taking away the curtain, and it shows us just exactly who he is. You know, it's like, holy crap, like, you need to get a little bit farther along in your, you know. Well,
case in point, when they come out of the shuttlecraft and Spock and Sybok are fighting over the gun, and Kirk and Sybok are fighting over the gun. Spock comes out, picks up the gun that was dropped while they were fighting,
shoot him,
levels it at Sybok.
Yeah,
exactly, and it's like, okay, that doesn't really feel like a Kirk moment.
Yeah, no, it really doesn't.
That's not the Kirk we really respect and love.
And I mean, yeah, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, exactly. It's just, you really, I don't know. There's moments where it's like Shatner. That was a Shatner decision. Mm-hmm. Shatner. Yeah. Like, Shatner. You know what I mean? So, I'm not going to revisit this movie anytime soon. That being said, I did, in a weird way, kind of enjoy it. I don't think it's good, but it's like, well, yeah, that was weird.
There are brilliant moments, and like the top shelf moment for me is when McCoy faces his pain.
Yeah,
right?
That was good.
When he has to let his father go, and then that emotional outpouring to Sybok in the moment after he goes through his father's death again. And it's like, that's gold. Yeah. That is an actor that knows what he's doing and is doing a fantastic job. And in fact, in that same interview with Lawrence Luckenbill that I remember hearing, that was something that he pointed out. He was like, I wasn't seeing D. Kelly. I wasn't seeing an actor doing his thing. He said, one of the things that made that such a wonderful scene for him is he felt like he was one human being connecting to another human being in a moment. It didn't matter if it actually happened or not. He was connected with that human being, and you could see it in his eyes. And I'm like, I've gone back and watched that movie since hearing him say that in that interview, and it's like, yeah, D. Kelly, that's some of D. Kelly's best acting right there in that scene.
Yeah.
In a movie that I have hated for years.
Well, and it's like, I was watching this movie, and it's funny, like, it kind of reminded me of Thor: Love and Thunder, and it also reminded me of The Last Jedi. Things that can be found, like silver linings, but an overall bad picture, you know what I'm saying? Things that only maybe, like, the fanniest of fans would appreciate, or, you know, like, something was left open-ended enough to where they could come to the conclusion, like, I love this thing for whatever. But it's a polarizing one. You know what I mean? Like, I would never... If I was trying to get somebody into Star Trek, I would probably have them skip this one. But it's sounding like you probably can't skip this one because it ties into the next one. So...
It doesn't really.
Yeah. So,
but that's a discussion for another time. And since you have invoked Last Jedi as a talking point of positivity, I think it's time to end this conversation.
I think you're right. There's not much more to say. I knew that would get you. It always does. I have no more notes. Star Trek V: The Final Frontier. I think while it's nonsense and it's not very good, you kind of still need it. You know, like, in a way. Like, I don't know. What are your final thoughts?
Yeah, like I said, this movie's aging process has been problematic for me, but in the end, I come around to actually liking it. You know, there were other things, like the introduction of Sybok. Spock has a brother suddenly. That's problematic in some series, like Star Trek. And it may not have been that big of a deal back then. The problem I see now is, like, modern Star Trek storytelling has really latched onto this idea. And they are trying so hard to tell this backstory of Spock and his brother or sister and, and things like this. And they have latched onto it to their detriment because they have lost the ability to tell actual Star Trek story. So, on the one hand, this is a much better movie than some of the stories that are being told today, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. And I think modern story or modern Star Trek storytellers really need to kind of let go of some of these things that they've seen in these past movies, like what they've got in Star Trek V, and tell different stories. Try to find something that's better, because they're just rehashing already weak story points.
Yeah.
But that's just my feeling on it. It doesn't take away from the movie itself. The movie, there's a lot of good there. It's not great, but it's still, as a Star Trek fan, I don't hate it.
Yeah.
I don't love it.
Yeah,
but
it's weird.
I
Same.
am entertained and enjoy watching it.
Yeah, same. I'm entertained. We'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
So.
And that's what we want at the end of the day.
That's what we want. Entertainment's just something to pass the time. Nothing more, ladies and gentlemen. I wish I could go back about 3 or 4 years and tell my old self that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Anyways, okay.
That's a discussion for another time.
That is a discussion. That's a punch, counter punch, deep cut.
There you go.
Speaking of, we
where we get into the existential thing.
That's right. Yeah, crises on the horizon. Speaking of which, we're gonna wrap this up, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you coming around and listening to the show. If you have any suggestions of things you'd like us to talk about, feel free to email us, which I believe is linked in the description, or you can leave a comment down below. You can also find me at Twitter at, I think it's still _wannabecritic, I believe. Or, I'm sorry, not Twitter, X. You know what I mean? And yeah, it is. It's at _wannabecritic. Send me a DM if you want, I don't know. If you have anything you want to say, I'd appreciate it. Ethan?
Ladies and gentlemen, he can't remember his handle, therefore he does not check his X.
Yes, I do check X, I just don't check my personal X that often. No one ever messages me. So, there you have it. Ethan, you have anything you want to say?
And we like it that way.
We do.
So
we do like it that way.
Change it for us, folks.
Yeah, let us know. Ethan, do you have anything you need to say?
No. You can follow me on Facebook, Ethan Maestri. You can find me there if you want to say something directly to me. Geekly Retrospect, give that a listen.
Yes.
We'll get back on the horse here pretty soon.
Our sister podcast, the Wannabe Network, formerly the Wannabe Critic Podcast. You can follow us on all podcasting platforms. And go check out Ethan there, where he has a show where he and Ryan do a very wonderful job on the Geekly Retrospect. All right, Ethan.
We have fun.
We do have fun. Say goodbye.
Wiedersehen.
Keeping It Real is owned and operated by Wannabe Critic Productions, a subsidiary of Highland Productions. The show is written and produced by Gabriel Fast. If you'd like to support us in some way, you can follow us on social media that is linked in the description down below. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can email us at highland.productions.business@gmail.com. We'll see you next time on Keeping It Real!